our study tonight should be in the merit of the speedy and healthy return of the hostages, the healing of the wounded, the comforting of the bereaved, and the protection of our soldiers, the protections of our brothers and sisters and children and grandchildren in Israel, and for all of us all around the world. I also just want to, because, you know, I need somebody to say it to. So I just want to say how horrible that murder of the 6-year-old boy in Plainfield. It's just heart-wrenching. It's just horrible. And nobody else should be harmed in any way from what's going on.
Agreed.
In the last, how long has it been now? Whatever, feels like forever. However long it's been since it started. I think many of us have felt kind of unity during this time. But I was noticing that even though we feel very close to each other, and in some ways, like we're in each other's heads.
Touche. Touche.
Gotcha.
But we're not all dealing with this at the same pace. There's different stages of experience that we're going through, and I've noticed this, that there's some people that are very much in the rage stage. There's some people that are in the depression stage. There's some people that are able to think. There's some people who aren't able to think. So when we're engaging each other, we're not all ready to hear the same things. Like when I was in the rage stage, I didn't want to hear anything other than that, killing. I didn't want to hear anything but besides killing, and anything else I had no patience for. I think there's some people that are farther along than I am, who are already in a thoughtful stage where they're able to think bigger. And I don't have patience, as much patience for that, even though there's nothing wrong with it, thinking about where is this going, and how to be mindful of innocent human life and things like that. There are people that are able to really think that through, and think about it and be in that context. And I'm not quite at that context, but it's not wrong. But the thing is, if we're not in the same stage as the other person, it could still hurt and it can still feel wrong. So I understand that, and we're all, because we're together, it could be that I'm talking in a way that somebody else isn't ready to hear somebody talk about it, and it'll hurt them. And I don't mean to hurt anybody, and I'm not trying to talk about this in a way that that will seem hurtful. It's just we're not, for some reason, all on the same. We're not in the same stage together. We're all in it together. We're all in it together, but we're not necessarily at the same place yet. And so even we can hurt each other by talking about what we're thinking about this. And so I'm trying not to, but
It's okay, kill Hamas, that's it.
not what I was going to say.
That's what
That's
I'm thinking.
I know, but that's why what I'm saying might not be pleasant for you because that's where you are. Okay, so I just wanted to share a couple thoughts about this. One of them is if you asked Jews for around the world, if you ask Jews around the world for a Jewish notion that they believe in, and you wanted to get an idea that you could get the broadest possible agreement on, you'd probably take a stab at the notion of tikkun olam. Now, that has become a kind of catch-all term for what we call loving kindness or chesed, the commitment to chesed and loving kindness in the world. And I really do think it's something, not all people think of it as the words tikkun olam. Some people just think of it as a commitment to chesed and loving kindness, but I think that would be something that you would get a very, very broad affirmation from Jews of all, wherever they are on the spectrum of religious observance. But I think you would get almost everybody to agree with you on that. And that is, it's a very wonderful thing to be committed to. But it comes with a price. It comes with a price. Wanting to do good comes with a price, and one of those, and that price is that you are looking for what's wrong. In order to be able to do good, you first have to find out what's wrong. And this is possibly connected to the wiring of our brain anyways, that it tends to be that people see what's wrong and sort of zero in on it. This is even without there being network news or CNN. Even before that, many suggest that this is part of our wiring and that it serves us because as a survival technique, being able to identify things that are wrong helps us survive. And again, it's very, very important. Nobody's suggesting turning it off. But the byproduct of looking for what's wrong is that we don't necessarily see what's right. So for instance, let's say somebody had a large white painting and they took just a dab, they took just a dab of paint, let's say black paint, just a tiny dab of black paint, and they made a dot like in the middle. And then that you called people over to look at the painting and you asked them, what is this? They would most likely say that's a dot, even though it's a large white painting. It's a large white painting, but it is our nature to see the dot.
Mhm.
And the fact that that's how we would characterize it, because that is how we would characterize it, a dot, that whole painting, also suggests that it's what we're focused on. We're focused on the dot. We're not necessarily focused on the painting. So, and this is a problem. If I'm even calling it a problem, I'm even doing what it is I'm talking about, which is that if we're always looking for problems, again, with the best of intentions, because we want to fix it.
Always fun.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, that's all I'm looking for is problems. So if somebody would ask me what's going on with the world, I would say that what's going on with the world is crummy. It's a problem. Why am I saying that? Because we're all focused on what's wrong. Why are we focused on what's wrong? The news is focused on what's wrong because it's an extension of us, of what interests us, and these are the things that interest us. And even with the best of intentions, it interests us what's going wrong because we want to fix it. And again, and we may want to fix it for all the best reasons. But the byproduct of it is that all we see is what's wrong. We don't even see, we don't notice when we're doing that. We don't even notice we're doing it. So if somebody would say, did you see the painting in the room? Yeah, I saw that dot.
Mhm.
Again, that's all I saw. That's all I saw. That's what I'm walking away with, the dot. So I don't have perspective. I don't have broader perspective. This is true, again, just in the best of circumstances. Everything could be going right in my life and in the lives of the people around us, but I'm still going to find what's going wrong. That's my mode. That's my mode of being, is to find what's going wrong. Again, even to try to fix it. So I'm focused on what's wrong, and not, I don't have a true sense of the big picture, and I don't have the sense of proportion. I don't have any sense of proportion. That's true in the best of circumstances. But when I'm enraged, I also can't, it's also a part of the experience of being angry. Part of the experience of being angry is also a narrow view, like a very narrow perspective. You're very, very focused on what's wrong, and you can't, and it's very hard to see anything outside of it. If somebody would stand outside your thing and start making hand gestures, you would not even know they're there, because all you're able to see, you have this tunnel vision, and all you're able to see. So now you have this combination of a kind of natural way of looking at the world, plus you had anger and rage to it. So we tend to stay in that place. Now, if I'm actually somebody who's trying to solve a local problem, and that's really what it's about, then that could be useful to have that narrow vision, because it keeps me focused on what's wrong, so that I can fix it. That's not us.
Is it Amy?
No, it's the side.
So so then it's useful. But if that's not what needs to happen, if I'm not actually in the process of fixing what's wrong and trying to keep my focus on the thing that's wrong, then it can be a debilitating kind of problem. Let's say after 9/11, if I'm standing near where the towers were, and I'm just looking into the pit before they, built something else there, but I'm just looking into the pit. So I see the destruction. I see what went wrong. Yeah. And when I look there, I'm seeing evil, I'm seeing death. And even if I try to get mystical, I might call it judgment. Midas Adin, God's character of judgment. And if I just keep my eyes on that place, that's all I see. If I could step back and take a broader view, and especially right after it happened, if I could step back and take a broader view, I would see that at the center, at the core, is murder and hate and strict judgment, but all around it is loving kindness. Even Stephen Jay Gould wrote an op-ed piece, which I've shared with you in the past, where he characterized his experience, because after 9/11, he and his family went to the site to try to help, and they were handing out water bottles and bakery goods and to first responders and second responders, whatever they're called at that point, in order to help at all, with anything that they could, give support to others. And he made the declaration that the forces of good in the world, that goodness in the universe, is far bigger than evil. That was his experience at the time, that there were 20-something people involved in the terrible events of 9/11, and then thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that were just looking for goodness. And Aviva Zornberg, years ago, she wrote it was a piece about Ruth, about the book of Ruth, in a book that was titled something like Jewish Women Writing About Ruth, or something like that in the title. Women, but writing about Ruth. She suggested that the book of Ruth itself is the story of this, how when something terrible happens, in the wake of the thing that is terrible, chesed follows, loving kindness follows. And it could be said that the book of Ruth is this. It's the book of how chesed follows tragedy. You have Naomi, who returns from her exile shattered. Her family's dead. Everything important in her life is gone. At one point, the people who see her say, "Is this Naomi?" And she says, "Don't call me Naomi. Call me bitterness." That her life is it seemed like she's coming home in order to die, and that's it. Everything's over. But she has this nagging problem, which is Ruth. She just won't go away. And Ruth's keeping her alive. She's going out and finding food. And then eventually Ruth nurtures her and brings her back to a robust kind of life, to the point where she herself becomes a life giver. She nurses Ruth's baby. And the book, the narrative portion of the book ends with people saying, a baby's born to Naomi. She's been completely revived. And so it could be said that this is the story of Ruth is the story of this phenomena, that when there is judgment, when there is death, when there is tragedy, chesed follows. Think of a shiva. You're at a shiva. So you have the one person who is mourning, and then you have all these people around. That's like the model of it. These are the people coming to comfort. The mourners are far outnumbered by the people who are coming for out of loving kindness, out of chesed. There's that, amidst the terrible stories, horrific stories, there was that story of relatively new immigrants, and a member of the family put, maybe her mother or somebody, a member of the family, just put out a message asking if anybody could come to the funeral, because she wasn't sure if they didn't know that many people, so they weren't sure if there was going to be a minyan at the funeral. And I don't know what the number was. I saw somewhere it might have been 10,000 people showed up.
Huge.
Right. So that's like the model of this of this idea.
Wedding. Somebody was
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah, but especially here, you do see that same motivation towards chesed.
Yeah.
But here, it's because of our tunnel vision, and also because of our need to fix problems. We often stayed glued to the pit. We stay glued to the tragedy. We don't allow ourselves to see the bigger picture. The bigger picture is more complex, and it's way more complex. This is kind of our unfolding of the relationship with God in last week's Torah portion and this week's Torah portion. God is he's originally characterized by the name Elohim, which we think of as somebody who's like a judge. Rabbi Foreman distinguishes between God as he is revealed in that first chapter, where the name is just Elohim, from God as he's distinguished in the next chapter, where he's now called Hashem Elohim, the four-letter name, and Elohim. So Elohim nowadays we would in shorthand say that is God in his attribute of strict justice. But he expanded on it a little. He said, if you look at the text, you'll see, then ask yourself, look at the story, and how would you get to God in his aspect of strict justice, as God as a judge? How do you see anything in that description of the first few days that is anything about God being a judge? And then he said, look at it. Every day God, as it were, wakes up. He's not sleeping, but every day, as it were, God gets up and he looks around and he says, what am I going to do today? And then he thinks about something to do. And then he executes it. And then he reviews it, because at the end he goes, and it was good. And it was good. So what you have is planning, executing, but then review. Now, you could say that it's in the review that you see him judging. But even in the planning, this is not Rabbi Foreman, I'm suggesting, even in the planning, there is judging, because he has to find out what's missing or what needs to be there. He has to be thinking about that, which means there's something wrong or something not quite there. And so in a certain sense, there's also a kind of problem solving that happens in the beginning, and then there's executing, and then there's a review. So this is God judging. He's looking at things and judging. So, but it's become a kind of catch-all for God's attribute of justice, which we tend to experience as painful. It doesn't have to be, but that's how we tend to experience it. Then you have the adding of loving kindness. Then in the second chapter, he's now starting to be called Hashem Elohim. The four-letter name is associated with loving kindness. So I'm suggesting that this is as we step back, this is how we see God in what's going on. At first, it's just the tragedy, it's the strict justice. Then as we step back, we start to see the loving kindness. We start to see the chesed. This doesn't necessarily make it easier because it makes it more complex, because there's both the tragedy and the pain and suffering, and there's the compassion and the loving kindness. So you have both of them together, and the both of them together can sometimes be worse to deal with than just the judgment. But we can choose, once we know this, we can make the choice to allow our gaze to see the bigger picture. And even sometimes to turn it just on the chesed. It's a choice. And sometimes we need, for our own nurturing, we need to get our mind, our focus off of what's wrong, and to shift it to the miracle of what's going right. And here the what's going right, just because of the force of it suggests that its character is miraculous. It just emerges. Ask yourself, did you expect immediate unity? If you had never gone through one of these things before, would you have expected that with all the infighting and all the other stuff that was going on, there would be immediate unity? Maybe if you had experienced one of these before, you would expect it. If you have not, you would be shocked how quickly it happened, how quickly people who said they're not going to fight anymore were signing up to fight. They were stepping over people to be able to volunteer to fight, and everything else that went on, the need to give, the need to be there, the need to help, the need to share. It was just like, it's so powerful that it feels as surprising and miraculous as the destruction. But again, we can't take in the miracle of that, and not just the miracle of it, the benefit of the focus on that. The benefit of the focus on that. We can't take it in if we don't allow for it. If we only look there. If all we're going to do is watch news, we're not going to see it. Even if all we're going to do is scroll through Facebook, we're not, or some other social media, we're not going to do it. We actually have to find a way to step back and see it without that, because those just want us to see the destruction and what's going wrong. It's not, unless you find a site that is devoted to the chesed that's happening, or it's unlikely to show up, because it's not what they do, and it's not what we usually do. So you actually have to go out of your way and ask yourself, just absorb it, even amongst your friends and amongst other people that are just the people that are asking, what can I do? Where can I give to? Oh, this place is good. This one's, or etc. Even in that milieu, or maybe go to read or to look at some place that is specifically devoted to this, devoted to showing the loving kindness that's happening all around the world, just to give us an opportunity for the perspective to see that a few terrible people did something, right? But there's millions of people that are attempting to do good, and this is always the way. It's reliable that when and this is reliable like a law of nature, even though it feels miraculous. This is that reliable, so that if I look on either side of these things, sometimes I have to step farther back because the destruction is so huge. But if I allow myself to do that, it is as reliable. It is like a law of the universe that chesed is bigger, it's wider, it's and it's always there. It's always there, but you have to look around for it, and we need it. We need to see it for perspective because there is no, after at a certain point there is no benefit that is coming from staring into the pit. We need and it's a terrible load to bear, and we need to have help. We need help from the chesed that's all around, and we can get it by connecting to it, by focusing on it, by being part of it. We actually can get that benefit, but we have to be willing to step back and rely on the fact that it's there. We're focused on the dot and we're not seeing the painting. This is a lesson for all of life, for every day, but it is particularly important lesson for now. I remember the first time I was on that floor of the, what is that hotel called now, across from Emma's, where the North Shore Center for Performing Arts. Yeah, the DoubleTree. You know, on the top floor they have that room they call it the windows room. Right. So when you're up there and you look at the surrounding areas, which is like Wilmette or Skokie or whatever it is, if you look at the surrounding areas, you see just almost like a tree canopy. It's so sort of surprising the first time when you see how many trees there are in the area and how beautiful that looks from that vantage point, like this tree canopy. When you're walking in, around the area, you don't feel like you're in that. But when you're up there and you see it, it's like it's incredible. Just for perspective. So before,
Can I interject a question or comment?
Yeah.
For those people who choose to not see the chesed, why the selfishness?
I don't know. I mean, there's people it can be deep and complex.
Okay,
It could
why look at that dot,
right,
and be selfish about that dot,
right.
as opposed to coming out and looking at the whole picture?
It could happen for many reasons. It could be complex. Like, let's say you have somebody whose wife passed away and they're not getting out of the mourning.
Right.
And their friends are trying to bring them out of the mourning. That can be a common experience of it. You could have this can show itself in all different ways. It is experienced by others as a kind of selfishness, but it's not simply selfishness, because they could be an otherwise not selfish person, but for some reason they're not willing to let go. They're stuck. Right. They can't let go. They can't let go of. and different reasons. Somebody might think by letting go, it goes away. Somebody here might think if I don't stay focused on it, then eventually people are not going to take it seriously. People have to remember what happened, remember what happened, remember what happened. We will not forget. We will not forget. We will not forget.
That's the mantra.
We
Right.
forgot.
Yeah, we
Right.
forgot. We forgot.
No, I'm saying, but what does that mean?
That's fine.
We will not forget. Why we're so insistent on it? Because the story needs to be remembered. Because if the story isn't remembered, it could. So you may feel motivated to stay on it, because of that, or because of lessons that need to be learned. But again, it could be for you might think it's for good reasons, but there's a certain point where not being able to let go is a problem.
Right.
Like if I'm doing it and I can turn it off, like let's say there are people that lead those trips where you go back to Poland and you see the concentration camps, then you go to Israel, right? So they're taking the person to the thing itself, to Auschwitz, and then, and then they're going to go to Israel. So the idea is get them there, see it, connect to it, and then come to Israel, right? But it's supposed to be for a moment to see it. But there are some people who never can let go of it, and not just people that survived it. I mean, there's some people that it's all they think about. The Holocaust, it comes up in every other sentence, whenever they're having a conversation with you. The Holocaust, the Holocaust, the Holocaust. They can't get out of there, even briefly. They're there. And so there's a myriad of these kind of examples for this. And I'm assuming that each one of those has its own solution, but to it. Okay, so that's that. And now, briefly, I just want to finish with something else. Before this happened, after Yom Kippur, Liz and I shared this with Liz and a few others. After Yom Kippur, there was this terrible moment in Yom Kippur in Dizengoff where Jews were fighting against Jews about outdoor prayers and stuff like that. And I had this moment, a kind of experience. I felt like the only way I could characterize is I felt like when Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. And it was one of these moments where suddenly things just went to a level that all you could do is step back and say, whatever led to this, whatever was going on, is not justifiable. I don't care who's involved. There is, at this point, it doesn't matter whose side you were on, whose side I was on, whatever it was. This just went to someplace that it can never, ever go. And we've got to somehow figure that out. And so, right. So at that time, it was a Thursday morning after Yom Kippur. So we were talking, and I don't remember who asked me, Lois or Liz or somebody asked me, so what would you do about it? What can you do about it? So I'm starting to think through it, and I realize that I can't make it, I can't necessarily change other people. I have to begin with myself. I have to recognize we're all interconnected. Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh. We're all interconnected. We're all interconnected. And because we're all interconnected, when I do something, it affects everybody else. So in theory, if I change, we all change. So again, I can't go out and ask somebody else to change, but I can change, and by my changing, everybody changes. And then while we were talking, it just, so I just saw for a moment this notion, which we read about, but I really felt it in the moment, which is that there is no them. When I'm having an argument, it becomes us and them.
Mhm.
It becomes us and them. And at some point, you have to realize there is no them, there's only us. There is no them, there's only us. And that's the beginning of the fix. In other words, the beginning of the change, it's still, we have to work it out, what's happening, we have to work it out, but there is no them. As long as I see them, I am in some ways being misdirected. I am not looking where things are happening. It's almost like if we accept the notion that we project what's inside of us outside of us. So imagine that you're watching a movie. I don't know how movie projectors work nowadays, but in the old times, when they had the movie projector with the reel and everything. So imagine there's a projection room and you're sitting in the seats next to a person who's never been to a movie before. And there's just the white screen, as the projector turns on, there's just the white. And then maybe there's maybe there's just the white for a minute. And then there's a fly. Now the fly, because you've been to movies, that the fly is on the lens of the projector. But the person who's never been to a movie before has no idea. So he thinks there's a giant fly
sitting on the screen.
And then he may even get up with a broom to try to sweep the giant fly off the screen. So if you use that as a model, this is almost reliable. It's almost reliable that when I see something wrong in somebody else, it's most reliable that what I'm seeing that's wrong is actually what I'm projecting. Let's just take that for granted. Let's just assume that for a moment. So one of the, again, for some reason, when there's a them, there's a screen. When there's not a them, there is no screen. There is no screen. And as long as I'm looking at a screen and seeing the problem on the screen, I'm being misdirected because it's what's wrong is not out there. It's in here, and it needs to be resolved. When it's us, that we're always where it's happening. But if there's them, for some reason, this is one of the byproducts of identifying a them, is now I have a screen to shine things on. And now I can think it's outside of me and it's really inside of me. So I'm having this helpless moment right after Yom Kippur, where it seems like the chasm between us is so huge, and the terrible disunity and hatred and all the things that are going on. And then in 1 second, like that, in 1 second, it shifts. And now there is no us and them. I'm talking about within the Jewish people. There is no, within the Jewish people, there is no us and them, right? So this is a gift. This isn't because of our hard work. This is a gift. And the thing with this gift, because I've had this gift before. I've seen this gift before. During the Gulf War in 1991, when I was in Israel, there was a period of time where the entire people were beating with one heart. And we talked about it amongst each other in ways we're talking about it now. And then shortly after it was over, Moshe Shapiro, blessed memory, he said, we're like he called it a kli shavur. We're like a broken vessel. We've got a crack. And all of that is dripping out. We're trying to hold on to it. We're trying to hold on to it. But it's dripping out. So I'm going to assume this is going to drip out again. This gift, where we're taken to a kind of perception that we haven't earned it. We didn't work towards it. We're just put into it, where we actually see the world from the place of there is only us, no them amongst us. There's only us, no them. And we got to this, we were given it as a gift, but it is not a gift that lasts. Which means that we have a couple choices. One choice is to just ride it until it's over, which is the case when you get a lot of these kind of gifts. Then you know you're in the zone for a certain period of time, and then suddenly you're no longer in the zone. You enjoyed it while you did. Another way, another option is to try to make the most of it because you know that it is going to go away. So you really lean into it, into the unity, and you try to get things done that couldn't have been done if there wasn't this sense of unity, calling people that you haven't spoken to in 20 years, making up with people that you never thought you would be able to make up with, hugging people you never thought you'd be able to hug, that you actually lean into it and try to make the most out of it while it's here. There is one other option, and that other option I'm going to call taking a souvenir. We talked about this before.
And that's my
That is good.
souvenir.
I'm going to call it like taking a souvenir.
That works.
Rabbi Twersky, whenever I see Rabbi Twersky, by definition, it's Rabbi Michal Twersky of Milwaukee. You should live long and in good health. So Rabbi Twersky once told me a sort of Hasidic take, and I've shared this with you many times. He once told me a Hasidic take on a midrash at the beginning of the Torah portion of Vayetze. It says Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva, and Yaakov left Beersheva. Vayelech Harana, and he went to Haran. So the Medrash asks, and Rashi quotes it, why does it have to tell us that Yaakov left Beersheva? We know he was in Beersheva. It could have just said he went to Haran. So it says, because B'yetzias HaTzadik min hamakom osa roshem. When a tzaddik leaves a place, it makes a mark, or like creates a void. When he was in the town, he was the splendor, he was the source of light, he was all this stuff. And when he leaves, it's gone. So the actual language is B'yetzias HaTzadik min hamakom osa roshem. When a tzaddik leaves a place, it like makes a mark. So he said a sort of Hasidic reading on it, that when you're in that zone, and you know you're not going to be in it for long. Yaakov was in his father's house, a kind of idyllic, safe setting for him. Now he's going off to the house of Lavan. He is making a Yerida. He's going down. Things are going down in his life, and he knows that he's about to go down. So what do you do? So again, our situation. We know that this unity that we're feeling is temporary. It is a temporary gift. We did not earn it, unless you could argue because of the sacrifice of the people, we earned it. But we didn't earn it through work. Let's just say that. We didn't earn it through work. So we have this, and it's most likely going to go away. So he said, the way of reading it is B'yetzias HaTzadik min hamakom osa roshem, that what they do is they mark the path. They mark the path so they know how to get back. It doesn't, there's going to be a way back because I marked the path to get there. So, and I'm suggesting what I call it taking a souvenir. Now, what's the thing of a souvenir? You go to let's say you go on a vacation of a lifetime. You went on to some place that's always been a dream, and you spent 10 days there. So what do we tend to do? We tend to get souvenirs. Mm-hmm. So you buy a painting or a rug or something, and So what is it that a souvenir does? So a souvenir is our best effort to travel back to that place for a moment, a brief moment. When it's there, we actually feel like we're there. It transports us. When you show the pictures of your trip to your friends, if they've never been there before, they're just pictures. So you're looking at the pictures together with them. You're actually going back to the place. For a brief moment, you've been transported. It's a port key. For a brief moment, you've been transported, but they aren't. And so for them, you're having an experience. You think they're having your experience. You actually went back there. They're not. They're just seeing pictures.
Nice.
Oh, that's interesting. And that's why it never works to spend time with people that have never been there and you're showing them your pictures. What's happening to you is not happening to them. And same thing with a souvenir. If you have the picture on the wall or the rug on the floor, when you're seeing them, you feel like a connection to that place. So I am suggesting that we take souvenirs from this place, which means there's that either we take some action that will be with us afterwards that is from this place. One of those things I was saying, like new friendships or a new connections that are only possible because we're in this unified moment. Taking a souvenir like that, or some commitment that we're making because we're motivated now and we're not going to be motivated afterwards. A commitment to do something, a commitment to call somebody every week, a commitment to take on a new practice, a commitment to study something new, a commitment to seeing something new, a commitment to something, an action that we take, and that will have with us. There'll be some results, something that can stay with us afterwards, and it becomes the steps back to this place, because it's not going to stay unless the miracle happens, and this is Mashiach. It's not going to stay, because I've been through this before. We've all been through this before, but I've been consciously, mindfully in this before, and I saw it go, and it's going to go again, and it cannot, because that moment, that Yom Kippur moment in Dizengoff, there's no explanation for that. There is no justification for that. That is we can't go back there. We cannot allow ourselves to go back there, but we don't know how. We didn't know how at that moment. Now we're given some kind of a vista, and we're seeing we're getting this moment, this brief moment, and we have to take advantage of it. We have to take souvenirs. We have to mindfully consider how we're going to use this unity moving forward, so that we never, ever, under any circumstance, go back to what was going on in Tel Aviv on Yom Kippur, or when Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated, or any of those other kind of moments. We can never, ever, ever go back to those moments. And here we have something that could help us. We have to use it. We have to use it.